At least it won't be an accident for 6 weeks.
Right, we are starting. Welcome to the Waipuna Halswell-Hornby-Riccarton Community Board Information Session Workshop. If we can please just do the karakia first.
Did we used to do a karakia for information session?
No, we just started it today.
What?
And so, apologies, we have received an apology for lateness from Tyler. Oh, we've got Debbie on Zoom. Right, so
Yeah.
it's there on Zoom. You there, Debbie? Can you hear us, Debbie? We can't hear you.
Just here.
We can't
So
hear.
it's time to wake up, Debbie.
I can't speak any louder.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Come through. Earlier we couldn't hear you. Thank you. Okay, first on the item, the strengthening communities funding processes. Right, Marie and Helen, welcome.
And Eileen.
And Eileen. Hello.
Just introducing Eileen Yee to you all. Eileen is our new Community Development Advisor, filling Bailey's former role. So you'll possibly see, if you haven't already, you'll see her out and about. So she's a great addition to our team.
Welcome, Eileen.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you. And I know I've got to point it at your camera, not at mine. Okay. And I've just put it all wrong. I'm sorry. I see the spelling mistake.
Yeah.
Pass that one.
Doesn't matter, we can't spell either.
We move quickly on to the next slide. So what we're doing today is just filling you in on what the board projects bids are, and a touch on what the strengthening communities funding structure is, just to put the board project bids into context there. So just having a look at community board funding. It all comes out of the Strengthening Communities Together strategy, the direction for it. First of all is the Strengthening Communities Fund, and that is determined through the long-term plan and the annual plan. So the amount that's in the Strengthening Communities Fund isn't determined until after the plan has been adopted. So don't know that for sure. From the Strengthening Communities Fund, the organisations apply for grants. So a lot of that funding goes into grants into the community. At the moment, the applications are still open. They close tomorrow at midday, and at last count, we had about, I think, 46 received, but about 38 or so in progress, submitted, not or unsubmitted, not received. So just to sort of let you know that that's what we're looking at. There could be more come in if we're doing them last minute. From that Strengthening Communities funding, you also, what's left over from it that you don't allocate. So traditionally it's around half a million that you get. What you don't get gets put into the discretionary response fund for the coming year, and that's the money that you can allocate throughout the year. From that, again, so that's why we've got these cascading down. You make the decision, either grants to the community throughout the year or board project funds. So we're going to go through what the board projects are, and some of those are the other small project funds that the board has, and we'll go into those in a bit more detail. So that's basically the structure, going over the structure of your community board funding. Some at times, I know we've heard at times people say, oh, the funding's open all year round. We'll clarify that this discretionary response fund is open all year. But For groups, if we do the difference between strengthening communities and the discretionary response, strengthening communities fund is the fund that the organisations who they should be applying to that for the yearly costs for the standard projects that are delivered, that they deliver continuously or, year after year. That is the fund they need to apply to. Okay. The discretionary response fund is for maybe to kick off pilot projects. So if we go to the previous meeting when there was the pilot project of the tool shed, example is that. So what we'd expect is in future years, if the tool shed is going to continue, they would apply to the next Strengthening Communities Fund. So organisations should not be applying to the discretionary response fund for their normal, for the everyday operational. And we're trying to discourage that as much as possible. So we'll go on though to board project. So board projects, what board projects are is they're projects that are delivered by staff, could be contracted though, out, and that it's funded through the discretionary response fund once the discretionary response fund is set up. And basically these are ones that create connections, enable participation, they can build capability and capacity, and they can celebrate contributions to the community. Okay, so they're not. Groups can't apply directly for board projects, but indirectly they can. We'll let you know when we come to that. There's a couple of indirect ways. You might be able to do it.
Is it that one?
Right. So historically, just to touch on what you've done historically over the last 2 years for board project, and we're going to go through each of these. Anzac Day, expenses, the awards, community leadership opportunities, culture galore, engaging with the community, off the ground fund, summer with your neighbours, swimming accessibility and activation, and youth development fund. Just a note about 2 of those there, culture galore and swimming accessibility and activation fund. You won't see us presenting on those 2 as we go through because we no longer do the swimming accessibility fund since Matatiki has opened, and Culture Galore is now going into as a citywide fund. Underneath the YDF there, you'll see some top up. So throughout the year, topped up the 2 years, we've topped up the YDF funds when that $10,000 limit has been, has been spent rather. Carry on. Here of them are going to T in this. Right, Anzac Day expenses. This is basically for wreaths for 6 events and just some small expenses for some of the more the community ones. So the likes of the Hornby service to create flyers and things, such as that, some of those small expenses. Just to note, the Halswell one, the Halswell Residents Association apply for funding for the greater expenses for theirs because they have more expenses. And we're trying to encourage now that the Greater Hornby Residents Association have taken ownership basically of the Hornby one for them to follow suit with it.
So that's to the
Strengthening communities.
Because it's year on.
That's a regular thing.
Yeah.
And then with that GHRA and Halswell going through strengthening communities, would then lower the 1,500 next year?
It's not much money that goes. It's about $100 or so. It's not a huge amount that goes to them. And Halswell has always they've never been included in this.
And also you have to remember that any leftover money that, say for example this year, any leftover money that is left over is still part of your discretionary fund.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get lost.
And there may also be the possibility of another event once the Upper Riccarton War Memorial Park opens. If a group decides to do something here.
Okay.
So just flagging that one.
Cool.
And up in the top corner is how much it was being how much you gave to it last year.
That wasn't me, hey?
No,
That
it
was
was
me.
me. Sorry, I tried to be helpful. Is that on, Helen? Did I exit it?
I have no idea.
You minimized it. So
No, I didn't.
Switch on the slide.
Next one. I'm sorry, I'll be to the
Now we ain't going like this. That'll help.
No wonder I wasn't getting it when I asked it.
Last few times. Yeah.
To it. Just trying to get it back up again.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Tyler. How's it going?
So just while we're waiting for like you
just have to go through. I'm sorry to one. They should be able to do it now. But turn their clicker on.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Right, community awards, these are a combination of the Garden Pride Awards and the Community and Youth Service Awards. Basically, they celebrating the contribution of the community within the community. So the Garden Pride Awards, at the moment, we hold a formal ceremony every 2 years with the, in between, them being posted out. So this year we held a ceremony. So what we're proposing next year, which is the non-ceremony year, is to hold a day downstairs in the hall here, where it's a pickup day where people can come and pick up their certificates. But what we're going to do is have it like a bit of a cafe. So if they want to get a group of them want to come in and have a cup of tea and coffee, we're going to put tea and coffee on, you know, bickies and that sort of stuff. And they can still have their bit of a gathering that we'll put the nice, you know, the tablecloths and that out that they can just, so it's not a formal presentation, but an invitation, an opportunity for them to come together, for some of them to come together if they want. And if, you know,
And if board members want to be down there serving tea and coffee, most grateful.
and sitting and just sitting and discussing and talking with them and maybe rostering on for an hour or so each if you want. That's up to you to come along. We'll let you know when that's happening.
And would that be a day that would be worked out amongst our diaries to try and have this available?
Yeah.
Because that would be quite handy.
Because we can do that.
Yeah.
Well in advance.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's quite a bit of staff resourcing that goes into those formal ceremonies.
Yes.
A considerable amount of staff resourcing. The whole team, basically this year, it took the whole team out for the whole day.
Okay.
Plus Noella beforehand, indescribable amount of hours that she had put into preparing and such like that. So, yeah. That's a huge resource. Yeah, is that, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just a question around community awards. Other boards do an edible and sustainable awards, and the mayor and
Some of them don't.
I know some of them don't.
Don't do it anymore.
Yeah. So the mayor and I were visiting a chap yesterday who actually does the judging for those, and he's in our ward, and was asking, is it something that our board could consider? So
That's something that the board can consider. Absolutely.
Yep.
But when I can speak from when it was originally set up and the board that it was originally set up for, it was designed to encourage people to grow vegetables. And what they have found is after researching it all, there are a lot of other awards that have come about since they first initially set up. Also, they went, is this the most, putting this amount of money into an award ceremony, judging award, is this the best way to get people doing vegetables, or is it better that we support our community gardens or run workshops for people to actually get practical skills to achieve that outcome? But that's up to the board to decide.
The board did, just trying to think back, the board have at one stage, and I can't remember when, sorry, it's in the back recesses of my, and the older I get, the further back that goes. The board has done, including the Garden Pride Awards one year, edible gardens, and it didn't fly.
right, yeah.
I can recirculate because there had been a query a few months ago and I sent out something to the board. So it's in 2020. There's a cost of $1,500 because the judging is through the Horticultural Society, and we had 13 awards. Those gardens are normally in people's backyards, so there's still the comms that one of our team would need to be resourced for. So it's similar time to that of the Garden Awards, where we have about 200 recipients for 13 similar costs.
Yep.
Because we have to pay someone to do the judging. But like Helen said, if that's something the board wants to consider, tonight is where we need that indication when we get to
Yeah.
the bids.
And, you know, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve more people growing? And is that the best way to do it?
And whether there is resourcing in our team at the moment to do that, and if there's not, it would have to be contracted out, and so it would be a lot more than the $1,500 to contract it out to somebody to do. But if you want to put that money aside for it,
But if I was going to grow food, it would only be to eat at the end rather than get an award from a community board I haven't heard of. You know what I mean? That's
I think the difference, isn't it? That it's hard to get people to grow veggies. Yeah, people will grow flowers long before they grow veggies. And I see this as one way of encouraging people to have a go.
but they wouldn't do that because we've got an award.
No,
They
but it
wouldn't go
wouldn't.
food because there's an award though.
Yeah.
So I'd be very keen for anything we can do to and they help enable people to be growing food. I'd be all too keen for that. If there's something we can have a think of, whether it's
Well, we do quite a bit of 126.
Free
veggies and free plants, competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
So we try
and supporting those sort of initiatives.
Yeah, those initiatives.
Extra workshops at 126 might be better, as you said.
Yeah, I'm all too keen for that kind of thing. Yeah,
we do
But
run.
no one in their right mind would start a garden because the community was.
Because they might get a piece of paper.
No one in their right mind.
Yeah.
know that.
No, you
Got a question from Luke?
But is there a potential though that we could have a category of award under the Garden Pride Awards for growing your own food, rather than its own separate event?
It would have to, so for the judging,
Oh, yeah.
so with the Garden Pride Awards, people drive around and they look at their front gardens. They don't go into the back
Okay.
of the gardens. So
It's
as
the street,
Bailey's was saying,
Gotcha.
for the veggie gardens, you have to go back. Often they have a long conversation about what they've grown, what's worked, hasn't. So the judges do spend a significant amount of time judging. So you could do it if you wanted to, but we would achieve the outcomes.
Doesn't everyone who enters the garden will get a certificate anyway?
Then they don't enter it, they are judged by
Judged by strong
people
past.
from the Beautifying Associate of Judges. And everybody who's judged, they get something into their letterbox. They also put a little wee certificate in for ones who are just about there, but not quite there.
Well, hold on.
So you might not get one
So,
if your garden's not good enough.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Do you get an acknowledgement that you entered?
No, you don't,
No,
you
no,
don't
no,
enter it, they
okay.
just drive
They
around
drive past.
and.
Completely random people.
How do they know where to go?
And go down
they've never
properties.
given me one.
Rude.
I live
Not that I have a
I
problem.
live down a back seat, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
qualify. Anybody
Okay.
who's got a garden
No back
behind the
gardens.
fence doesn't qualify. It's
All right,
The more you know, eh?
so we finished with the presentation. Oh, you keep going.
What have been done?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
If we just go back to community service awards, basically they're for, this year you did the awards presented out in the community for people amongst their peers. The overwhelming feedback we've got back is that the community loved that. Really loved the opportunity to celebrate alongside of their own peers. So we're proposing that continues.
Yes, but it's been great.
All right, question from Helen?
Yes, we also agreed at our last meeting with Noella that for the individuals who don't have a group, we'd invite them in for coffee here.
Yes, so
They have them as a group.
So they have the opportunity to come in here, and two of them took up that opportunity. One took up that opportunity.
But we probably have them at the same time, because it was quite intensive in terms of going out to meet individuals.
Yeah.
And so we bring
Our job.
those who haven't got a group around them, come in for a,
There was only one who elected not to have it done out in the community amongst their group and out amongst their.
well, I wasn't, there were about 3, I missed one, but there were a lot of individuals in Riccarton who seemed to just have their perhaps parents around them.
We can
But-
accommodate anyone else.
But we did agree at the last meeting, so
Yeah, Helen, for people who don't have an event out in the community, they'll come here and we'll go.
We did
Normally
have a
on a
group
Thursday
meeting.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we'll do our best, but
Yes,
depending on their availability.
yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
We've
There might
given
be a
some
couple.
things before, like at the start of a board meeting.
Yeah,
as well, which is
certificates of
really-
appreciation and stuff
yeah,
like that.
That's been really
So
great
it's
too.
basically very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
We do community leadership opportunities, so these come out, sort of based on a needs base, so when the community identify a need for training, it gives some leadership opportunities for the people. So for example, this year, we're doing risk management training for youth leaders in the area. Last year, we did mental health first aid training for a group of some of our community leaders. So that's sort of where the community come to us and say, look, this is where we need some training or this, something like that, we will try and get that facilitated and get that in to do that.
What's the feedback been from the people who've been along?
The mental health first aid one, they loved it.
Yeah, nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Loved it.
Did you have one of those today?
Yeah, we did.
Today, did we?
No.
Did you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
We could do
Yeah.
that for that.
Engaging with the community is just some extra funds to be able to go out and do that extra bit of engagement and enabling greater participation. It can be like the top one is the bit of engagement over Waikola Skate Park with some youth, and that's where you usually need a few incentives, or the stuff in the mall there you can see from the long-term plan stuff.
What matters most, yeah.
Yeah, just those sort of stuff. So that's what that goes towards, is that additional stuff over and above, particularly the citywide stuff. It's over and above what is done with the engagement team on a local basis here.
Andre?
The Facebook advertising, for example.
Yeah.
So let's say council's consulting on something relevant to our board.
Yeah.
And it could do targeted Facebook advertising around Riccarton, Hornby Halls or whatever.
Yeah.
How can that sort of thing be enabled? Because we're talking like a really small amount of money to reach a whole lot of people.
We can probably look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they probably do that.
Yeah.
But we can.
Yeah.
We can definitely look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to have
Yeah,
it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Off the ground fund. So this is one of the funds that come out of the discretionary response fund. So that's the small project funding to get a project off the ground. Quick decision-making turnaround. It's up to $400. And last year you agreed for the decision-making delegation to the governance manager. That's the real kickoff. So the two there that we've got photos of, one is of the Share Kai initiative. So that's the advertising around it. It's an off the ground fund to enable that. And then a Vietnamese cooking session. So those are the two photos there. So that's the type of thing. Get something off the ground, gives them a bit of money to get that off the ground. And if it kicks off, well, then they can go for discretionary funding to try and keep it going.
And strengthening.
Respect their communities.
Where were those events held?
Those two,
Yeah,
they were actually both at Riccarton Baptist Church.
awesome.
Yeah.
Right, question from Andre.
One tomorrow.
Paul, have we been provided a list of all the successful?
Yes, they're in every board report.
The area.
In the
Area
annual report.
Is
there's
there a
a-
list of them in the last
Yes,
year report?
yes.
And we presented to council as well.
Yeah.
So a list of all from the 24th.
So this is another one, Summer with Your Neighbours. So that was formerly Neighbourhood Week. Contribute the Summer with Your Neighbours funding goes towards a contribution to events. They're held between October and March. Traditionally, there was the applications were in August for events between October and March. As a board, said that you'd like to see the decision making through the year. Decision making did this year. To be able to do that, it was the best way was, again, a community governance manager delegation. It seemed to work really, really well with groups being able to apply and access that funding throughout the year.
And then Mark, so did we have any additional applicants when we extended it to March?
Oh, quite a bit.
We did have a lot.
Quite a bit of them were in fact, I think even as late as the end of, so they could apply up to the end of March for an April event. So, for example, the event that Cheryl Bellow did in Oakhampton Reserve, that was a Summer with Your Neighbours, and that's an example of one that was applied for at the end of March to be held in April. So it went the whole way through.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Okay, Mark?
The Some with Your Neighbours, is that something that we as elected members could be made aware of when some of these events are happening, so we can actually plan to get along and interact with the community?
Yeah.
Because I know they would like us having us there.
just have to bear in mind that sometimes it's up to them if they cancel it or change it or anything like that. If we've got a firm date of when they're happening, sometimes they'll just say, oh, look, we're going to have it in November or something like that, weather dependent. Yeah, absolutely. We would also have to let them know that or see whether they.
But sometimes it's up to them whether they want to invite us or not. I've been to a few who have invited me, but some.
And it could be that we could put on the form, would you like the community board to know about your event? We could do maybe a tick box with that.
That's a very good idea.
Because I certainly find one or two of them that I've been to, invited to them, they really appreciate having a councillor or community board member there to actually see who they are. And
so that's something we can put a wee tick box on.
It used to be a fairly automatic thing. We actually got a list of the organisation and where it was being held and the dates.
Yeah, we're able to do that when all the applications closed and say end of August with them being through the year now. But it's something that we can put. If they say yes, we can put it into the calendars.
Cool.
Move on.
Youth Development Fund. This is the fund for young people to apply for either participation in national and international events, personal development opportunities. At the moment, it's for 12 to 25-year-olds. The board has emailed delegation for fund. This is again another quick turnaround for funds over $400, with basically 5 members agreeing within 2 business days. The governance manager has delegation up to 400, and we roughly do a limit at the moment with 500 for individuals for overseas events and 300 for individuals for domestic events. At the stage to date, we've had 46 applications, and it's been topped up twice this year, so there's $19,000 gone into it, which is a lot of money. What we're suggesting a couple of things. So, Helen.
Firstly, we'd like to reduce the the age range from 12 to 24. This is in line with the youth ministry. So we feel that would fit quite well. And secondly, one of the things that we would like to do is when we present the report is to change the wording of the delegation. So at the moment, the wording is if they apply for more than $400, it comes to the board, whereas we would like to change that to our recommendation. What do you want? Our recommendation is but a local one that's 300 that it goes to the community board, because everyone, 99.9% of the applicants are applying for more than $400 because their costs are more than $400.
But it's only supposed to be a contribution of costs.
It's always a contribution. We're not changing the 5 and the 300. We're just changing the. So at the moment, when a person applies, if they apply for more than $400, it comes to the community board.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So what we're wanting to do is to change the wording around that delegation. So if the staff recommendation is for $300 or $400, it goes to the governance manager, no matter how much they apply for.
Yeah.
And
what's
So it's just a little tweak.
Because this is a fund that we're very keen to actually support. And I've had two children who've been really good at sport, and we haven't applied for this, but it's very hard for parents to get them from a national to an international level. Yeah. So what are you changing? I mean,
we're just changing the word
apply for
delegation.
600.
No, we're not changing the amounts, anything like that. We're just changing the word of the delegate. We're wanting to change the word of the delegation.
And what do you want to change?
So it's not, the wording around the delegation is around not what they request, but what the staff recommendation is.
So do you mean if they request 1,000 but staff recommend 300, then the governance manager would approve it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's a great idea.
How about just doing it for the ones for 300?
Well, that's what we're
thinking. And I think then the ones over 300 coming back to the board.
That's exactly what we're
thinking. So the idea is if someone
it's not them applying for that, it's where the recommendation would be that.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're thinking.
Okay, so if it's 300 is approved,
through the
With the
board.
governance manager.
Yeah, so
Over there.
if they're applying
Yeah.
for $1,000,
Yes, it comes
but
to the board.
staff recommends only $300,
Yes, it comes.
then it
It will
it
go
goes
with the
to
governance manager.
governance manager.
Yeah.
That will mean, Helen, that the
I think
board
it's
is
for
still,
domestic events. I think the 300 is fine.
yeah. So what it'll mean,
Once you
Helen,
get to an international event, you might want sometimes 700.
Yes, and we will definitely come to you around those.
Yeah,
But in saying that, Helen, we really don't encourage, we don't recommend going to that extra, going from 500 to 700 or higher for an individual. We realise that some of them need more money, but often they will just say, this is what we need. We'll appreciate whatever we can get. And talking to young people who get it, they are appreciative of anything they get. So whether it's 500 or 700, it makes no difference.
But I want the board to have the chance to raise it.
The board will have the chance, but for the board, for 500, keeping that cap for 500 for overseas events, it means that the board is able to support more young people.
Well, I think it's 500 as the sort of benchmark.
Yeah.
But
And the
if
board can make that
if the
decision.
board wants to grant 800, it's done that. It's graded. It
Yeah, the
granted
board will have the-
1,100.
So that's not changing.
Well, you have to be.
yeah, we're not
clear.
deciding right now.
No.
For that, because the board will
Listen,
have the,
I'm comfortable with 300 being approved by the governance team.
Yeah.
Anything which is going over that, I think comes to the.
Absolutely, yeah, that's what we're suggesting.
So that's just.
the current delegation is 400, just to be.
So we'll keep the delegation as 400.
Okay.
Yeah. But
If you want to,
range.
yeah.
all right, I've got Tyler and then Sarah.
Kia ora, guys. In terms of the overseas and domestic events, are there tier levels to your recommendations around who they represent? So, for example, if they're New Zealand athletes, they'll go for 500, but if they're domestic athletes going overseas, so for example, Canterbury Rep going to Australia, would the scope change from 500 to something less?
No, usually overseas travel will look at
So in the
500.
past,
I mean.
How do you sort of understand or deliberate on what kind of level you want to fund?
Well, we're just a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
We're just a drop in it. We're a contribution. Most trips, they're looking at about $6,000. I mean, yeah. And
It's part of the
even
big
for a
Yeah.
local national trip, that, and again, the kid's fault, that the board approved the other day, I looked at his documentation. He only got notified 2 weeks before he was going on.
It's a classic. They do it all the time.
Yeah, they do it all the time. So 2 weeks for this family to fork out,
Yeah.
$3,000 to go to the North Island to compete for his province. It's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I think if there were extenuating circumstances, we would write a report and present that to the board so that, and I've had with girls in the past that there are extenuating circumstances around hardship and all sorts of things, and we will bring that to the board and present that to the board.
I'm more than happy keeping it in your guys' hands.
yeah, we also will point them
Have a
often towards the Riccarton Rotary Trust Youth Fund as well.
Awesome.
And if they're in-
they don't fund that, that's not just the Riccarton area fund that they fund, it's, yeah.
And there's a couple of other.
Yeah.
You can also talk to Hornby Rotary.
Yeah.
Right, we've got Sarah and then we'll move on.
Just in the context of obviously spending 19,000 and wanting to be conscious of how much is being contributed to this, the age limit was 12 to 25 and you're bringing it back to 24.
Yeah.
Like, say a 24-year-old compared to a 12 or 13-year-old's got quite a different profile and the ability to earn their own money. So I'm wondering, what's the justification for cutting it off at even 24?
So historically, this ward area has had 25, and one of the reasons around that is because we've got the university in this area and and also, the stats coming out, there's a huge high population of people in, like the Riccarton area. Other ward areas, though, have got different cutoffs. So some are 20, some are 21, and some are 22.
Do you take into account whether or not they're a student, tertiary or primary?
We ask
versus
that.
a working.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and so that might influence the amount that you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, and there is a question that is just unique to the Halswell-Hornby-Riccarton one is, are you currently a student?
Okay. That's cool.
So this is what we're proposing at this time. So this is not a decision-making forum. These decisions will go out to you as reports, probably to the discretionary response fund once it's set up in the new year. So this is what we are proposing. Basically, Anzac Day expenses don't change, the leadership doesn't change, the engagement with the community not changing, and the summer with your neighbours not changing. The awards, if we're not holding a in-person ceremony for the Garden Pride, we can put that down to 4,000. We can, with the off the ground, there's going to be a rollover because there's some still in there, so that will roll over. So that ability at the moment, is there for, and that at the moment will fund at least 5 opportunities there, and we can top that up as well.
Yep.
And the Youth Development Fund, we're proposing 15 and trying to keep it with no top-ups. So that's what we're looking at.
Oh, we might not make it.
Yeah.
Taylor?
So I've been talking to staff about this, particularly during the annual plan process, and one of the things I was looking into was sponsoring funds. So, for example, calling it the Mitre 10 Hornby Summer with Your Neighbours, something like that. I'm wondering if there might be any appetite for staff to explore that to help top up those funds. I know that we've got direct links within some businesses, such as Westfield. I've got some with Ray White, Harcourt, etc. Hornby will have quite a few. And I'm not asking, I'm wondering if there may be, and this isn't the place to do it, but for staff to maybe come up with a game plan or a report on how you might be able to do it, like an EOI for local businesses to be able to top up certain funds.
Partner with the council.
It's something we could investigate.
I know that's
So investigate the feasibility of it, yeah.
Yeah, because I know that Hereford won't do it. It's too big for them in terms of the strengthening communities fund. But something like this, grassroots kind of thing, a thing that businesses would buy in on it big time.
So my question would be, yes, there might be a possibility of looking at feasibility, but what we would prefer is our local groups and our local organisations to have a relationship with their local businesses. So they directly going to those businesses and having that sponsorship. And also, for our young people to go out and get support. That way, that relationship is nice and strong with the community and not reliant on us and changes in directions from an organisation.
And that's why I think that,
so we probably could assist with that means and ways.
I mean, within the feasibility study, it doesn't need to be an and or, it could be an and, where the local organisations connect to businesses. But at the same time, they're using us as a sponsorship opportunity for exposure. It's a transaction instead of, hey, can we check your name up on this if you give us a couple grand? This is what you get with this exposure. We'll call it Mitre 10 Summer with Your Neighbours. We're going to put it on Facebook. We're going to slap it here. We're going to slap it there.
We just have to be really careful that does have to be a citywide conversation. This is a fund that comes from the council that we then have delegation to administer locally. It's not our money.
And that's good.
That's what a feasibility would investigate.
But if we've got businesses in mind, it's just you're approving something for an applicant, and it can be sent on to the businesses for their information with the permission of the applicant. Say, are you comfortable with us also passing it on to businesses in the area maybe interested there? Yep. You just pass the details on. It's up to the businesses what they then do with what they then do with it. So it's just
early days.
It's passing on to them.
Which the team do already, and there's a local business here that has indicated that they were keen to support those grassroots, similar to off the ground. And so we could have a conversation with them where, hey, we've received the off the ground. If we don't have to give that money, if we don't have to use the ratepayer money for that and there's a business, then knowing what their priorities are, then we'll just pass them on.
I see where you come from, Helen.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? Where is our awards for community services? Is that under awards?
I think it's from the top.
Yeah.
4,000. Is that enough?
Because there's no ceremony.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's
Right.
okay. And then the last, that's quite hard.
That's very
It is, but I'll talk through it. Sorry, it's so hard. But just going through the Strengthening Communities Fund, just the process. So they close midday tomorrow. We indicated that was actually yesterday that was that amount there, which was, I think it's 44 and 35. I think it's gone up. From there, we as staff, we assess them, we contact the group, we work with the group, we've got knowledge of the group, and so we will do a recommendation. Just bear in mind that we, most of the time, as staff, we've been working with the group for a wee bit. We go through, just about do a forensic test on what they're given, look at everything. And then from there, on the week of the 9th of July, you will all be sent out a matrix of all the applications with our recommendations, and you will be asked to have a read of them, and if you've got any questions on them, come back to us with those questions. We will take those questions, we'll come up with the answers to them, and we will include and you'll get just under a fortnight to do it. Include the questions into the agenda for the meeting on the 14th of August, the decision meeting. So all of the board members' questions and the answers will be there then. So to the 14th of August, you will get the decision making the report that has the matrix again, the staff recommendations again, but also the replies to the submitted questions. That will cut down a lot of time at the August meeting. It also means that staff have got time to, if they haven't got the information on the spot, which sometimes we don't have the information on the spot, we may need to go away and get some extra information. We've got the time to do it. And so that is the process. So if we can just sort of mention to you that please, when we come to that question, that you have a look at that opportunity for the questions. And if some of you ask the same questions, similar questions, we will combine the answers. Just also bearing in mind with the Strengthening Communities Fund, it's already subscribed a lot more than previously. We can't fund every group everything they ask for. Some groups will ask for a lot more than they need. Some will ask for a bare minimum. Bear in mind that when we have a look at every single application, we will go through and consider everything. Sometimes we may not recommend as much as you would like. There could be a whole heap of reasons for it, possibly because of the call on the fund. Or sometimes it could be because the group is actually already fairly well resourced and would rather recommend funding for an organisation that is struggling for resources. So yeah, we understand that at times you have some organisations that you've got some really good relationships and you see some really good stuff happening. We see all that good stuff happening as well with that organisation, and quite often we also see a lot of, as well as the stuff that you see on the outside, we also see a lot of the stuff on the inside. So sometimes our recommendations will reflect that. So if you find that potentially the recommendation is not what you think should be, come and ask us why and ask that question, because we will sort of explain why it might not meet your expectations. And it's often it may not meet yours, it may also not meet the group's.
And it might not meet ours. Because we have to compromise as well.
Yeah. Okay. And we would love to be able to give all the groups everything they ask for, but the reality is we can't. And if, I mean, councillors will say how much more cutting has to happen at the council table with those groups. There are some groups there that just don't even get a look in. At least with the recommendations, we try and give some, we try and go with, we'll try and give most groups something rather than try and cut some out and say, no, you're a less priority than another group. So that's the way that as staff we recommend.
Okay, thank you, Marie, Helen, and Eileen. We're running out of time. We've gone over time, but I'm sorry. You have so much work to do on this. Thank you so much for doing all this, and we look forward to getting the matrix in July. And if I may take this time to remind members to please, as soon as you get the matrix, please work on it as soon as you can. Do not leave it till the last day or last 2 days to review the matrix, and just get in all your questions as soon as possible so staff can work on it.
There is a question on
I'm sorry,
but it's very critical to me on discretionary funding. So how much are you allocating?
We don't.
you don't know yet, Helen.
You don't know.
No, we don't know how much money is in the strengthening.
How much?
We don't know.
But I'm particularly keen on discretionary funding. So how much did we allocate this year?
I'm not sure, Helen, but we don't know.
Helen, it will
We don't
depend
know.
on how many
But it's not
applications
just
we
what's,
get and how
but
many
it's
we
not,
grant.
but it's not just what's over. We can say as a board, we'd like
Absolutely,
to give it
yeah.
90,000, for instance.
Yes, absolutely. You
Well, if
can,
I send a
but
question through,
but we
as to
don't
what
know
the
how much money is in
allocation
the
was.
pot originally. That happens after the annual plan is
Yeah.
confirmed. So we can't tell you
but
that at the
I
moment.
can
tell you what that is after the.
So
You don't need to put me-
not
I'll-
yet.
I'm only asking what you allocated this year for
About 82,000.
82,000. I thought it was a bit lower, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Christine?
So we move on to our next item, which is the Templeton Cemetery Plan consultation. Welcome, Eric and Hannah. Do we have Hannah? Yes.
Go to everyone.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Eric Banks, Parks Planner.
And I'm Hannah, engagement advisor.
You know everybody here?
No, it was, last time I met with the board was 4 years ago.
All right.
I remember.
Right, so maybe we'll just introduce from Helen around the table quickly.
Helen Broughton-Riccarton.
Thanks, Mark Hornby.
Hey guys, I'm Tyler from Riccarton.
Mayor Runton, Hornby Community Board.
Luke Chandler, Riccarton Community Board.
Mark Peters.
Andre Moores.
Anne Marie Halswell. Right, welcome.
Oh, and Debbie.
Cheers. And Debbie, are you still there, Debbie? Debbie? Debbie, are you still there? Right,
Obviously not.
1, 2.
No, obviously.
Yes, all right.
You always catch me when I'm in the bathroom, Marie. We were in between
Radar, you know, I
subjects.
know when you're in the bathroom. like-
Just wait
We
for
were in
the
between topics, weren't we?
Right, okay,
Right.
we'll move on. Thank you. All right, Eric, please
All right.
proceed.
Because it's been 4 years since we've all been looking at this, or some of us have been looking
Yes.
at the possibility of a cemetery in Templeton. I'll cover some of the background very briefly, and then you can ask questions. So the mandate for which one is it?
Which button?
Point
Oh,
there.
no, just one.
Right, okay, good. The mandate moving forward now is still back to the 2019 council resolution, where the council asked staff to prepare a draft development plan for cemetery and sports park on the council-owned land at Templeton, and to investigate options for augmenting the area, land area available. And looking at the background of how we progressed from there, starting off with the need for council to provide burial. That's a legal requirement under the Burial Information Act. looking forward, projecting forward our capacity in the various cemeteries that we have. If we don't utilise new land for cemetery, then existing cemeteries will reach capacity around about 2038. And in looking at our capacity going forward, it's important to allow a buffer as well. We don't want to get to the stage where we get down to the last plot and then before we move forward with providing plots at another site. So there's a buffer in there to allow for black swan events, pandemics or other disasters, and just ensuring also that we have capacity at one or two cemeteries at the start of being able to provide that new capacity at a new cemetery. In particular, excuse me, the two cemeteries that are proposed to still be offering plots for sale at the start of the availability of plots at Templeton are Belfast and Memorial Cemetery. Memorial Cemetery in particular is quite important to maintain capacity at for as long as possible, basically, because it's in the east of the city. It's furthest away from Templeton. It's an area which has become popular with the Polynesian community, and it contains the only urapa within the city council cemeteries, and the current Muslim area as well. So we don't want to get to the situation where standard burials take over the cemetery and we lose that point of difference, I suppose, or be able to provide that capacity for those specific groups of the community. So hence the need to move forward. The Templeton site was proposed because it's under city council ownership. It's a large site, it's over 100 hectares. The cemetery part would be roughly 70 to 80 hectares of the 100 or so hectares. Because it's a large site, economies of scale as opposed to several smaller cemeteries. There's space for being able to provide for different cultural needs, and it's easier to create buffers as well. So on one side, we have the Templeton community, the other side, we have a quarry. It also has reasonably good access from the city. The site, the groundwater in the site is very low. So the groundwater ranges between 11 and 14 metres below ground level, which is very good cemetery-wise. Don't have the potential for flooding of plots, etc., which we do at some existing cemeteries. The soil. The soil is quite conducive to plots. It's not overly saturated. It's reasonably good drainage. It's not particularly contaminated, and when I say particularly, all the levels below any way below, I think very much, all below very any danger levels. So there's a lot going for it in terms of a future site for a cemetery. Now, in terms of the council resolution, we're not consulting on the sports park elements. That was looked at when we were considering things back in 2019, but even then it was just very high level. This area could be a sports park. So we're not saying we won't ever consider a sports park for that location. But at the moment, we're just holding it as council land, and potentially that could be a sports park or not. We don't know at this stage. In terms of the part of the resolution asking council staff to look at or investigate augmenting the area of land area available, we did look at, I don't know if you can see it on that scale, but the little kink out of the top on Madison's Road there, that rectangular size, that's owned by the Ministry of Health. And we did look at that site, and we did also look at the three large lots to the south of the proposed cemetery area, between the cemetery and Jones Road as well. And we thought that the Madison's Road property could be a good addition to the cemetery for various reasons. It's adjacent to where the main entrance would be. It occupies a large area of road frontage. We could have control over preserving views into and out of the cemetery, and we could avoid potential sensitivity issues if that land was on-sold to another party and they developed it. So it could go either way in terms of affecting the cemetery or the cemetery affecting whatever the land use was for that site. But at this stage, the land is not available for sale. The Ministry of Health has not put it on their list for disposals. So yeah, they're taking their time over that. So if they do, then we'll reconsider it. And
is that the old Timbleton Hospital?
No, that was a different site, but originally the land was earmarked for a mental asylum site. Extension, yes, yep, but it was never used for that purpose. In regards to the timing and budget, as you know, we were originally proposing to go out for consultation in 2021. Because of the change to the LTP, it was decided to smooth the budget and push it out to the following LTP. So the first year of the new budget is this financial year. And that was seen as appropriate given the demands on capacity. It was okay in terms of the amount of time we needed to progress the project and still meet our capacity requirements. So this financial year through to 27, there is $1.5 million in the specific for this project. After that date, any budget requirements will be drawn down from program level into the project in order to develop the whole site. It costs significantly more than $1.5 million. Excuse me. Sorry about my dry throat. Right. So what we did, we spent quite a lot of time with different cultural groups in particular, but we'd had a have your say consultation period, which was open to anyone, but it was targeted towards the Templeton community and to the different cultural groups who we engaged with. We had 2 meetings with the Templeton Residents Association, 2 meetings with the Templeton community, and then we met with quite a few different cultural and cultural religious based groups who have specific burial needs to try and understand what those were and fit it into the jigsaw. There are also other various groups like people in the industry, funeral directors and so forth, sextons, and other groups who have an interest in burial methods but don't really fit under the category of religious or cultural groups like baby loss, natural burials, etc. So some of the sorts of information that we gleaned from that engagement under the heading of burial requirements. Cultural requirements are just an example of that. The ability for a specific community to be able to adorn their plots in a way which is a lot more involved, shall we say, than a standard plot. And we have that does take place now at 1 or 2 cemeteries, particularly Memorial. And unfortunately, it's not very well catered for, and at the moment, it does need a better solutions. So that's just an example of a cultural requirement. Religious based beliefs, which influence the burial requirements. Just one example is the belief that a separate or contiguous area is required by a particular religion. And for example, that could be a contiguous area or a separate area, or could just be in some cases that on a beam there are only those people with that religion, rather than having sort of half the beam one and half something else. So, and then we had the requirements of other groups like natural burials requiring shallow burials. Baby loss group, butterfly walks came up through that group, and so forth. Some of the common themes that came out were that a lot of groups wanted compass-based burial directions, so north, south, east, west. And what that enabled us to do, many of them wanted dedicated areas as well, but what finding out what those common elements were enabled us to reduce the number of separate areas. So we did, most of the people we spoke to, most of the groups we spoke to, excuse me, and in order to not compartmentalize it too much, we were able to, excuse me, get agreement from the different groups that they would be happy sharing areas, but as long as their requirements were fulfilled within that area. So, for example, the different directions of the plots. And so bringing that information to the design table, along with other information, has been what we've done to draw up the concept plan. The burial requirements that I've just talked about, the operational requirements, for example, access and storage, looking at trends in cemetery design, for example, greater involvement of families in the burials themselves, more environmentally friendly options, greater multi-use, recognising the space value of cemetery, etc. Looking at the adjacent land use, residential on one end, quarry on the other. So, for example, there's a need for buffering as part of the design, both in terms of, I suppose, potentially, you could say, psychological between residential and the cemetery, and also it provides another opportunity for further buffering from or between the residential area and the quarry, which doesn't exist there so much at the moment.
Just by buffering, you mean, are there setback requirements for burial plots from residential,
Yes.
adjoining residential?
Yes, there is, yep. So the setback requirements can be taken for the buffering proposed as well. And then there is a raft of investigations that we've undertaken, and they're based around the water design and the soil conditions that I mentioned before. And traffic impacts, for example, was one study that we undertook. That was seen as quite a reasonably high level study at this stage, although it was quite comprehensive. And the outcomes of that indicated that the contribution of cemetery activities to traffic issues in the Templeton area would be relatively minor, and the report indicated or made recommendations around methods for mitigating those impacts further, and they included things like the potential for encouraging ingress and egress via Madison's Road as opposed to Kirk Road, avoiding the intersection of Kirk Road and Jones Road, Main South Road, in particular, where the railway line crosses. And other options that could be employed include restricting burial times, like there's going to be a large gathering for burial on a particular afternoon or morning, then encouraging that to be at a particular time, for example, to avoid peak traffic issues. Another option could be to close the entrance on Kirk Road and just use the Madison's Road entrance, and encouraging people to use the Madison's Road exit, for example, if they're heading maybe back into town, to head east along Madison's Road, down Bart's Road, and then on to the Main South Road that way, as opposed to using Kirk Road. So what we'll do is that once the concept plan is approved, and we get into detailed design and consenting, then we'll undertake a detailed traffic assessment, which will be an updated version. It'll be up to date and more detailed. So we'll need that for consenting purposes as well. Yep. Right, so this is stage one, which is you would have seen attached to the cover sheet. So what we can see from looking at this is that the majority, 8% roughly, of the proposed burial areas are for standard burials. But all the different groups that we've talked about, or we've engaged with, that do require a separate area are catered for in there as well. And the way the stormwater is dealt with is that the stormwater flows generally from north-south, northwest to southeast. So the stormwater swales start off quite small around the pathways and internal roads, and get larger as they head down towards the southern end there, where they're include linear soakage basins. Parking is mostly on the internal roads, and stage two, at the stage we're thinking stage two will mostly be standard burials and an extension to the green burial area, but that's decades away. So that's why we're focusing on stage one for consultation only. And we're expecting that stage one and stage two should cater for the burial requirements for the city for the next 100 approx years. The next steps, which I'll hand over to cover with regards to the consultation.
Yeah, so now that we're ready with a plan to go out to talk to the community about, that will happen soon after talking to you today. We're hoping that consultation will be able to open to the wider public in the next couple of weeks. That consultation will include in-person opportunities to speak. We have been in discussion with the Templeton Residents Association this week, and that will continue tomorrow. And yeah, following consultation, we'll report back to you in the first instance, with council being the final decision maker. Is that covering everything?
Yeah, and just a very brief outline there at the bottom. It's quite a long time frame before we get plots available for sale, but it's a large site, and we're allowing enough time to go through the consenting process. Potentially it could take a while. So we're aiming for 2032, the first plots to be for sale.
2032 just for stage one.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Stage two, well, we don't know yet, but potentially it could be 30 years out. We'll probably have a transition, but it's yet to be determined.
Great. Right. Finished?
Yes.
All good? All right, thank you. I have a couple of questions, and then I have Tyler, Hank, Helen, Mark, Sarah. Anybody else? Lou.
All of us.
Right. And Andre, did you have?
No.
No, okay.
You're right.
Just in terms of consultation, so stage two is decades away, as you mentioned, but then we're doing stage one, we're focusing on the consultation there, but because there is a stage two, the boundary with Selwyn is in Dawson's Road, along Dawson's Road. So will you be consulting, because there will be cross-boundary issues here, will you also be consulting with Selwyn even for stage one?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they'll be
Great.
on our mailing list.
Yes.
We have spoken to them in the past.
Okay. All right, thanks. And my last question, does Christchurch have any columbarium?
We not in the city council cemeteries, we don't.
And we're not planning on at some stage?
We were considering it for Avonhead, potentially, but yeah, it's still up in the air. No firm proposal.
It's not in this one, because some cultures also would consider having columbarium.
Yes.
Does everybody know?
We are
for the ashes, the urns.
Oh, right.
So there's like some sort of building with cubicles.
Yes.
Or you have your own,
No, yeah, okay. Columbarium is a type of ash wall, but yes, we are definitely considering ash walls for Avonhead and definitely for Templeton as well.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Then I have Tyler.
Good guys.
Sure.
My hometown. It's absolutely ginormous. I didn't realise how big it is.
Yeah.
Big a Templeton itself.
Yeah, that's right.
In terms of the staging, I'm just wondering around, you've got boundaries along Azalea, Madison's, and Royden. Is that right? You're on the back of Royden Drive.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about the setbacks that's required for that?
So in terms of burial plots under the zoning, there's a 10-metre setback. But depending on the situation, like around the residential areas, then we'll be almost certainly incorporating vegetative screening as well. So once we get to detailed design stage, then depending on what comes through with the consultation, then we would look at potentially not having plots even further out than 10 metres, 10 metres is absolute minimum sort of thing. I think depending on what people are particularly concerned about, the main thing that we've seen so far is that we can quite easily obscure or certainly lessen the view of cemetery features like stones and so forth using vegetative screening. So the key will be to use vegetative screening, but at the same time not obscure any views that people have over the rural landscape towards the mountains, for example. That sort of came up.
So yeah, I was thinking.
Okay.
I was thinking something along the lines too, heading
right
with south or southwest.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's fine.
You've got Azalea Reserve. Well, I don't think you'll mind as much, but I was also wondering how complex it's going to be with the residents and your experience. How complex are these things when it comes to submitters, coming against something like this, a cemetery right next to the house?
Could be.
And I think,
different
and
local.
you sort of alluded to this before as well, that the
Yes.
scale of the place is, you know, way bigger than people imagine. So we've got plenty of space to, like, we down that southern end, that's where the main stormwater swale is. So, and that's necessarily vegetated to filter out the stormwater. So that again is a buffer itself, both in terms of distance and vegetation. So, as I say, we can vary the detailed design to suit individual preferences up to that point. But,
Gotcha. Okay. Last quick question is around
Oh, hang on, just
sports park.
Tyler, just to add to your question, just so you know, the maximum building height there will be 8 meters. 8 meters is the maximum building height. Then the minimum building setback from the road boundary is 5 meters. And then from the boundary with any other zone will be 20 meters. And then burial plots, as Eric says, it's 10 meters from internal boundary. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so you've got the
Story house.
urban rural zone and then the
Yeah.
cemetery zone on top of that, I think.
Oh, this, yeah. Oh, this is for the cemetery zone. Oh, but then it was still rural urban
Yeah,
fringe right now.
that's right.
That's right. But
Gotcha.
true.
Thanks, Gary.
So, yeah, so one of the key elements of objectives of the rural urban fringes to maintain the rural aspect. So not too many buildings, other facilities.
But will you be rezoning this at some stage?
At some stage, yeah, at this stage, we're looking at gaining consent under the existing zoning.
Yeah,
But yeah, at some point when there's a plan change coming up, then we'll.
yeah, because we are doing rezoning plan changes right now.
There's a hell of a lot of greenfields around here. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about that then.
Yes.
I see you got one eye on the past and then one eye on the future. Wanted to ask about the sports park and potentially, and that could be in the consultation document.
83.
I'm wondering if that could be in the consultation document to sort of alleviate the pain, if you will, by seeing exactly what it's like, what it's going to be like in the future. What are your thoughts, Hannah, on that?
I'm just big on expectation setting. So if there is something that there's some sort of assurity and deliverability, then for sure, yes. But if it's either ages out or not locked in, then I'd be more unhappy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all we can say really is that it's earmarked for future council use, and one of the considerations would be for sports. But yeah, unfortunately, we can't be more definite than that
Cool.
at the moment.
That makes sense.
It's a long way down the track, isn't it?
Yes, and that's right. And if that was considered, that would be another exercise on top of the, separate from the cemetery.
It's not something that the artificial pitch people would be interested in.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps they were looking for sites for that actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whether it could be a cost share with Selwyn being on the boundary.
Yeah, that's right.
It's true.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
take note.
They do love a bit of cost share.
Due to do so.
You done, Tyler?
Yeah, thanks.
Right. I've got Hank, then Helen, Mark, Sarah, Luke. Right, Hank.
It's a huge site.
That is.
And I just came back from the Templeton Residents Association meeting on Monday,
Right.
and they appreciate the size of the site. Yep. They're not,
Towards the village.
it dwarfs the village. It's bigger than the village. It's right in or on the village. So it kind of takes over a bit of the village, a good percentage of it. And there's a fear of the increased traffic. It's a big cemetery. It's going to have a lot of people in it. You're going to have a hard sell to sell the traffic management going down either Kirk or Jones Road.
So they won't want a sports park beside it then.
Sorry?
So they won't want a sports park beside it then.
They want that now, though.
Yeah,
Well, but
They don't want them
but
to
if
be
their
as
concern
much.
is traffic, they're not going to want a sport park by
Well,
By cemetery.
Kirk Road is already a
Should-
pretty busy
So
road.
should we write the idea of the sports park off
No.
if traffic's their concern? You know what I mean?
The other thing,
Rezone.
Yeah.
the other thing that sort of came through a little bit was a little bit of mistrust. Because when you look at the drawing on it, your sports park dovetails quite nicely into stage 3 of what you've called 1 and 2 stage development, and that's part of the fear.
Sorry, can you just explain?
So if you look at the drawing,
Yeah.
and look how large it is, then your sports field looks more like a stage 3 of the burial site.
Okay. Yeah.
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 And that, you're saying you don't want to tie yourself to a sports field because it might not come for another 30 or 40 years. Yeah. Temperature's going to grow.
So you're saying that if we don't
Include,
point out
If you
what
don't
that
apply it in,
it's going to be assumed.
it's going to be because the map actually shows that.
Yeah, so we can make that really clear.
It
that
needs
there's
to
no plan for that to be
quite clearly.
for the cemetery for.
Because you're going to have a reasonably hard sell anyway. I mean, nobody doubts that a cemetery is needed, but the sheer scale of this one makes it difficult when all the other cemeteries around us are quite a lot smaller. So I'd be interested to know how you're going to sell it to a community that isn't all that enthusiastic at this stage.
Yeah, I guess in various ways, some of those are covered, but I guess probably again at detailed design stage, when we go through that process, that'll be the key for updating the existing study that we've undertaken and being as detailed as it needs to be. But I think also and I remember from previous discussions as well with the community that people were starting to see the plus side of the benefits of having a cemetery there, as opposed to potentially something else in the future, because around that area it's not going to stay rural forever. And with a quarry there on the other side as well.
I think they're well aware of quarries.
Was that sorry?
I said they're well aware of quarries.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So as I think I mentioned before, the cemetery will provide a better buffer than open fields obviously the cemetery, the quarry has buffers in place as per requirements for consenting, but we can improve on that again so that the effect it'd be really interesting getting an update over the last 4 years from the community about how things have evolved with the quarry and how they see the potential impacts, in terms of any dust, noise, traffic, trucks and so forth, how that's panned out. So we need to know that ourselves. And I guess that's a selling point, a greater buffer to that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair selling point. I think it's one that would even be appreciated. Yes. But the fear still comes to make an already very busy road and a complicated intersection at the main road end, at the main south road end. Even more difficult, more complicated and more busy is going to be a reasonably hard sell.
Yeah, I think and what came out of the traffic study that we've undertaken already is the need to avoid that intersection and do what we can to discourage cemetery traffic from using that intersection. And that might be more than just discouraging traffic, it might be preventing it as well by closing the Kirk Road entrance, for example. So people have to use Madison's Road. Potentially that could turn down into Kirk Road, I guess. But if we give them a clear route, clear direction to avoid, they'll want to, if they're heading back into town, they'll want to avoid a difficult intersection anyway. So if they realise through promotion or experience that heading east on Madison's down Barters Road and Wayne South Road, there is going to be a lot easier for them then. But that'll come through with the updated study as well.
And for the consultation, real focus will be finding out where those real pain points, if any, are, so that that's really clear to both staff and decision makers. So not just we don't support it or we're not interested by it, but what the disadvantages and what the advantages people are seeing are.
And potentially road, I'm looking at Andrew, but potentially road redesign could help in that respect as well, whether it's signage or whether it's lanes or whatever.
That's not a quick process, Mike.
No, that's right. We've got a wee bit of time.
But also we won't, like, to make it clear, we won't have those answers ahead of consultation, so that will be an ongoing process that we'll be able to, have to work through with the community.
All right. All good, Hank? Right, I've got Helen, Mark, Sarah.
Yes, I'd like to know how much of the land is put aside for sports. We had this discussion 4 years ago. Is it a quarter or is it half or a third?
The area of land that could potentially be a sports park,
Right.
that's it's slightly less than 1/3.
Less than a third. Thank you. That's the issue I have with this, is that I believe sports will know we're after where to go for sports in 10 or 20 years' time. And I think we should be half and half. So has that call been made? Is it definite that the sports is just a third, or is
potential? There's
going to be charged, Helen?
It's just possible potential.
Yeah, but I mean, I just want to,
We're moving it under the
it's the, you've got a large bit of land there. It seems ideal for both the cemetery and sports, and I prefer 50-50. So can that be shifted or not?
potentially, but we're moving forward under the premise that roughly 2/3 will be cemetery, because that will give us, we can calculate how much capacity that will give us going forward.
Okay.
And the notion of a 30-hectare area for sports, when they were looking at it previously, was an area that would somehow cover the needs going forward for sports, for a sports hub. 30 hectares seemed to be a magical area requirement, and I can't tell you.
So it's kind of an issue that's dead a bit. I mean, in other words, it's been debated and it's going forward. 2/3 the cemetery, 1/3 sports.
Yes.
Yes, because I actually believe that we need more for sports, basically.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I think in 20 years.
That will come through sports study.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We also need cemeteries.
Yes, exactly. You got to die somewhere.
We're running out.
Yeah,
But also the community
You're gonna
might
have
not
lots of
support
young
more
people.
sports parks if there's traffic concerns.
I know.
That's
Probably
what we do.
want it.
All right. All good, Helen?
Yes, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. There's a sewage treatment plant on the top boundary of that site, I believe. You obviously allowed for that, and
There was.
I think we'll find might still be
Whereabouts, sorry?
on the sort of on Madison's Road.
On the north side?
Yeah.
Don't recall that, sorry.
It's there.
Oh, okay.
Hudson's Azalea.
All right.
Next to Azaleas.
Okay. Is it a pump station?
No, I think it's actually a treatment plant itself.
No.
I've walked past it and it does smell.
Okay.
So it's operational.
Right.
So just wondering if that's been factored into your planning. And then further to that, with your consultation, are you going to be consulting with NZTA and Kiwi Rail, seeing how they're on the bottom end of Kirk Road there?
Yeah, so we'll notify them at the beginning.
Yeah, because that'll be an interesting conversation. Because
How many millions will they?
let's not ask them how much they want for it. So
yeah, there might be people alighting. If we get Rolleston to bring your
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we put a station there. Because I mean, I've heard the same as him. The TRA, they're lukewarm, one could say. They have got some concerns around that Kirk Road entrance exit, which they were completely unaware of until this plan surfaced the last week. And I guess one of the thoughts I've got as the local councillor is there the opportunity to look after the village with perhaps some Kirk Road improvements to soften the blow and better treat their main street through the process. That might be something for Andrew to take away and think about.
He's pretty good with Kirk Road anyway.
Yeah, because there's already been a lot of noise around Kirk Road.
If we can tie the impacts of the cemetery to improvement projects for Templeton, yes.
Yeah.
But other things, I guess the cemetery really needs to be assessed on its own merits. So anything else would just have to be advocated for by the vice.
There'll be some pretty good advocating. I mean, they're already advocating regards to heavy trucks and increased traffic down that road, and to bring more cemetery traffic onto that road. They're sort of multiplying their factors, and so it'd be good to have in the back of our minds that we need to look after as we propose to drop this in the community. Certainly the noises have been made around the scale of this compared to the community. So good quiet neighbours though, I suppose.
Well, that is true. And we do have estimations of the traffic generation. Obviously for the traffic study that was done. It's not massive. And it'll be a very long time before you get any large numbers.
Should get any noise complaints.
That's one of your best.
More of that.
Definitely quiet, isn't it?
So I mean, it'd be interesting to see how the consultation goes.
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting.
And certainly, the thought around the future sports park, we should have a conversation with Selwyn about, see if there's a way of partnering together.
Absolutely. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future with potential amalgamation, etc. Anyway, but
You get the boys excited. I was on the board, as was Helen back in the day. The quarry was being fought against.
Oh, yes.
And having this pop into the equation right at the sort of 11th hour of the quarry.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
That was actually seen with great positive light by the community. Oh, there's some hope. We've got a buffer. So maybe that's something to suggest in your consultations, that this is a bit of a buffer zone between you and the quarry.
Absolutely.
So,
they've got a quarry hangar. We grew up next to a cemetery though in school, so used to it.
And the quarry, I believe what I've heard from the community out there, is being developed very well. They're not getting a lot of dust. Because it is being a very carefully controlled development. And also the truck movements, I understand, are moving pretty much in the way they're expecting off on the main highway and not through this village, which is
okay. Oh, that's good to know.
So they'll be keen to really be engaged with this to make sure that the village remains well looked after. Particularly through the consenting phase.
That's right.
Hope we don't get a no cemetery campaign started.
No.
All right, do we move on now? Are you happy, Mike? All right, Sarah, and then Luke.
So just around the process, so you said it's a council decision, and although it's really great that we're being briefed about it, I'm just curious to know, is that a standard practice that we would be briefed as a board and then it goes to council?
Well, it will most probably be a part A, well, will be a part A to council on the board. So council staff will, following the consultation, make a recommendation to the board, and then the board recommends to council. And then depending on how many people put their hand up to be heard, if there's only a few that could be heard at the part A meeting, and then you make a decision based on that. If there are lots, then we might have to go to a hearing, which would be February, but wait and see.
But even if not decision makers, this board is a key stakeholder in this decision. So make sure that there's good information flow.
Wasn't that part of the resolution, the council resolution, that it was going to a commissioner?
No. There was part of the resolution was to set up a hearings panel, but that was it was more of a just sort of administrative type resolution that was thrown in at the last minute kind of thing. As long as people who want to be heard are heard by whatever means, and then the council still gets to make a decision then. I don't think the council is going to jump up and down. It should be a hearings panel.
You'd like to be a commissioner around the change of zone, I'd imagine. That'd be right.
Yep.
Yes, that's true. Cool.
So from September 2019 is when it was originally at the board. So would that mean that since then all of the property buyers of properties on the boundary line and in the surrounding area would have known that this is in the pipeline?
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
That's right. So we started consulting very soon after September 2019, right up until around about May 21.
Okay. Okay, so this isn't a new thing for residents.
No, unless they just moved in.
Unless, well, yeah, and you'd hope that they would know.
Yeah, the Residents Association, I've known about it for a long time.
Yeah, okay. Just curious to know, do you, and this may be too early to ask this question, but in terms of like deaths in our area per day, do we know how many daily deaths there are?
We do know roughly in Christchurch, there are about per day, well, there are 3,000 a year, so whatever that is. And then a relatively small proportion of those are buried in city council cemeteries.
Oh, small proportion. So not okay.
So a lot of ashes, and they end up in the crematorium gardens, or people hold on to the ashes. Some go out of the district as well. So, because Christchurch City Council is one of the few that don't operate their own crematoriums, our balance of full burials versus ashes is roughly 50-50, whereas everywhere else it's vast majority is ashes.
Okay. And then is there flexibility around what and where the cherry for the community in terms of like playground upgrade, or would there be a willingness to work with the community around giving something back that's not the sports park in potentially 30 years, that's something that's a lot sooner than that, that's more local for them?
I kind of like, as I was saying before, if we can tie it to the impacts of the cemetery, then we may be required, or we may just volunteer some kind of mitigation, which could be along those lines. But if it's not, then we can't really do that.
So does that mean that it would have to be on the cemetery grounds?
Well, potentially, yes. I mean, by and large, it will be only what we do within the cemetery, but the cemetery will provide open space values like passive recreation.
Yeah. They did look at the meeting on Monday night, but they probably wouldn't use the cemetery playground or open space. It's more of the existing area that they're currently using on Kirk Road. That would be, it's out of scope.
It is, so it would have to be
probably
part of decision making.
Yeah.
To say.
It is out of scope, but Templeton's domain is on the renewals in the next 3 years, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So
Not part
that's
of
going to
that.
happen anyway,
Okay.
regardless of the decision.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's helpful. We'll bank that and try and get some more. And is it the fact that it's in a flight path? Not an issue?
Not really. Other cemeteries like the Old First and Avon Head as well. And they're pretty high.
Yeah.
They won't be able to make noise complaints.
That's right. It's not like you're next to a sawmill or something like that. It's like the occasional plane going over at 500 feet or more.
Yeah, true.
And I've spoken to air traffic controllers as well. It's not an issue really.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Avon had cemeteries also within the airport noise contours, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. All good, Sarah?
Yes, thank you.
I've got Luke and then Hank.
Kia ora. On traffic, how many people / cars do you expect to attend per burial?
Per burial. That is in the traffic study, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but typically per burial, there's only a few, 2 or 3 cars per burial. You get the odd larger one, but mostly very small.
What's the upper limit? What do you think?
Probably something like 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many burials do you expect will take place per day?
5, 7 days a week.
Well, it depends on the stage of the development of the cemetery. So it'd be like 1 to, and then in 3 years' time, it might be, 10 per day or something.
In Christchurch, on your figures, there's about 5 or 6 every day on a 7-day week.
Yes,
across the city?
That's
across the city.
Okay, but specifically Templeton, how many would you expect per day?
No, yet.
How long fully staffed or?
Yes,
Uh,
with just stage one run
Yep, I guess it'd be at least a dozen or so
per day or per week.
per day.
And what sort of hours of the day would you expect these to be taking place?
Well, they have standard burial hours, so it could be any time during daylight hours.
Okay.
But as I say, if the updated traffic study indicates that that's going to be an impact or make a significant impact on traffic issues, then they can be adjusted to suit.
Typically, they're between 10 and 3.
So not at primarily not at peak times.
No, that's right.
Okay. Currently it's being used as farmland, is that right?
Yes.
Is there any other use for the land besides farmland? Could it be residential if we wanted to?
Well, with either with a plan change, would be the easiest way. There,
but there's no ground conditions that prevent it from.
What be airport always gone to?
No.
Is that the only issue?
Airport always gone to might preclude some of that, I suspect.
Yeah, not too sure about that. Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest. Yeah.
I see like the design of it kind of to a degree almost like locks Templeton into their current format size. Obviously this was a directive from council, this site, but have any other sites been considered in that immediate area?
Probably the only one in that immediate area would be on Haskett's Road, which is a relatively small site that's been zoned, but it was reserved for cemetery purposes a long time ago. But that's pretty much quarry itself. It was quarried immediately next door, so the whole site is sort of shingle. So it's pretty small and wouldn't work very well for burials, cave-ins, and so forth. Makes it hard.
So the piece of land that you mentioned is owned by Health New Zealand.
Yes.
That in itself may be subject to offer back to local iwi. Is the land that we're planning on building the cemetery on a similar situation or no? Okay. And those like on Madson's Road, 177 and 175 and 173, have they been consulted directly yet? They're the ones where the cemetery goes around them.
Oh yes, yeah. All the residents, immediate residents, received drops.
Okay. And what else was on my list? And can some of the plantings that's involved, could locals in the area have their say in terms of what goes on there and how that's looking?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as I was saying before, with regards to mitigating the impact, the visual and I guess psychological impact as well, then potentially we could design it to suit what they have. I mean, the plants change over time.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of a general style or distance or height, and then yeah, yeah, we'll have to do that. I think regards to vegetation and other things as well, just so we get it right.
Yep.
Because of existing residents. Yep.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, thank you, Luke. I've got Hank and then Mark.
I think Luke's asked some of my questions, but I continue to be concerned about a lack of knowledge, if you like, about the traffic flow, because it is, you know, you're sort of suddenly talking about 50 cars here and 50 cars back for 5 days a week at a guess, right? That's roughly where your figures would lend me. That's 100 cars extra on Kirk Road every day during the week. That's a significant amount of traffic.
Yeah, that's I mean, that would be when the cemetery is fully developed.
Oh yeah, but that's what we're talking about. That those decisions are being made now for when that's developed. So when that's developed, this is what we need to talk about.
That's in like
no, we're talking about today.
30 years time.
Yeah. But you're asking us to make that decision today.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that to the best of our ability, surely, we are mitigating that problem rather than handing it on to future generations.
That's why we did the traffic study which stated that the impacts would not be significant. And I mean, I don't have it in front of me.
That's where you live.
In terms of the numbers.
Live in Kirk.
But that's something that we can take along to when we meet with residents, and so I can quote specific figures. And then obviously, as I was saying, we will update the traffic study as part of the detailed design as well. And we have all those different range of measures to direct traffic away from that intersection and Kirk Road in general that I mentioned previously. So
I think it'd be good for the fish and chip shop, the medical centre, the barber, they'd love it.
Yeah.
But anyway, just to clarify, we are not making a decision, anything today. So
No, we're not.
you're not asking us to make any.
I'm concerned that we're saying that what I'm hearing is that the traffic is not all that important because it's 30 years away. And that doesn't concern me.
no, it's whatever comes out of the updated study, really. Yeah.
Andrew's sitting there listening to all of this, taking notes.
Yeah, but even Andrew is going to end up there one day probably.
No, might get burned.
Yeah, brother.
Hey, we do water cremations now.
Yeah.
Okay, you done, Hank?
Yeah, I'm right.
We've got Mark, and then I think that's it for us. We've gone way over time for today, right?
Thank you. One thought in my head is around you'll be naturally developing and planting the site ahead of any potential opening.
Yes.
So how soon could we look at potentially getting in and establishing some trees and doing some planting in targeted areas?
I'd like to get something now, especially along the western edge. If that's an issue with the quarry still, I mean, I imagine it's not bulletproof what they've done so far, and it'd be interesting to hear, as I say, from the community how that's going. But the sooner the better, definitely.
Yeah. Because trees will take a while to establish.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as we got an approved design, they should be the first things that go in. Yeah.
So effectively, it could become part of the urban forest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's right.
Cool.
Very quick. 30
Significant question?
Very, very simple.
Okay.
There are existing trees on the site already. Could those be relocated?
Unlikely.
Okay, thank you. That was all nice and quick.
Easy.
All right. So from here, you're going on consultation in June, sometime in June. So we look forward to hearing the results after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Hannah.
Nice work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Eric, I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you offline.
Yep.
About that.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do a closing karakia.
Yeah.
Unihia, unihia. Yawati, Yamama, Edilana, Yara, Thank you. Session closed.
When do we know what's on?
Online, still online.
Oh, when it turns red.
Cool.